Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Musicians Insight podcast, where I sit down with incredible musicians from all corners of the music industry. We talk about music, business, life, equipment, technique, anything that happens to come up. Today, I'm sitting down with incredible trumpet player, Mr. Vinnie Ciesielski out of Nashville, incredible recording trumpet artist. We've just been talking sort of about what he's doing in Nashville and his recording career and what a daily life is like. If you want to sort of quickly elaborate a little bit on what that's like from wherever you would like to start, that'd be awesome.
Good thing. Thank you so much for thank you so much for having me. I dressed for the occasion. I just realized I'm kind
of you look great.
Staying right there too. That's kind of my wife is going to kill me. Did you wear that shirt? Really? Yeah, man. I've been very lucky. I've been in Nashville since 1992, and started playing live very early on. I picked up a couple of tours. That's my dog, Sam. Picked up a couple of tours and was able to quickly kind of move into the session scene. It's been really cool. To date, I've got almost 6,000 records. There's a lot of really cool things happening here in Nashville. A lot of big orchestral, movie soundtrack and video game sessions going on, which is really cool. Kind of pre-COVID. They're still doing them, but they don't do them with a 60-piece orchestra now. They break everything down into sections so that everybody can be socially distanced, which I think is the responsible thing to do. But you sacrifice a little bit of the feel, and certainly it costs more money to make those things, because instead of 3-hour or 5-hour or 7-hour session, you have 5 different sections, each doing a 3-hour session. And so it gets a little bit more expensive for the producers, but I have a feeling they're doing okay. Sony is making some money off of their video. They're going to be fine.
Have you listened to any of those? How do they compare as the overall to the other stuff?
Incredible. The tempos, like the most recent one they did was Star Wars, and Steve, my buddy Steve Patrick, was talking to me about it, and he said basically the tempos are bumped a little bit, probably an average of 8 to 12 beats a minute. So the fanfare that you always hear with the Star Wars becomes a multiple tonguing kind of nightmare, as you can imagine if you play that piece of music. My bag is really records. So you as an artist, if you have an MP3, if you have a song that you've been working on, you contact me, we negotiate a rate. You send me an MP3 of the song. We discuss what you kind of want to hear. Like if you have a signature lick, I'd like you to follow the guitar player going into the chorus, or, mimic the bass line at the end of the verse, going in, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And then I sit down with the MP3 loaded into Logic and start carving away. And one of the things we talked about was whether we use charts. When I first started back in the 90s, everything was charted. Everything was charted. So it was, the artist paid for a chart, they paid for each musicians, whether it be union scale or whatever the deal is, and they pay for the studio. Now, with the advent of home recording, and as you can see, I'm talking into my Royer 121, and I've got my Barkley Infinity and my room mics, and I've got a Warm Audio around here somewhere. We're set up to do small sections. This room behind me is about 22 by 22. So we could socially distance safely. I put somebody over there by the bike and somebody over there by the couch, and we can record 3 horns. Oftentimes what's happening is you'll send me an MP3, I'll record the trumpet parts, and then I'll send it to the sax player and say, the first tenor part is the second trumpet part, the second tenor part is the third, and I'd like you to put a Barry line on there, and we discuss that. And then you send it over to the trombone player with the same instructions, and a lot of these things are being done that way. Again, I think you sacrifice a little bit of feel and certainly some creativity, because me making up parts is one thing, but me sitting with 2 other really, really talented, brilliant musicians and bouncing those parts out. Hey, I really like that, but let's change it like this. And so it's a little bit limiting, but we're getting through, and so it's worked out. It's worked out really cool. But on a daily, I'll get up, have some breakfast, warm up for anywhere from, 45 minutes to 90 minutes. And then I'm kind of ready to go for the day. And then if I'm going to be home, I'll do, I have a little part-time hustle with Pearl, Pearl drums, the drum.
Yeah, I do.
Well, they sell and represent Adams marching brass here in the United States, front-facing marching brass. So they make trumpets, mellophones,
Really?
baritone, euphonium, tubas, sousaphone.
And that's not really, is that related to Adams?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
Made
okay.
in the same company. As a matter of fact, the trumpet, the marching trumpet, is modeled exactly after the A10. So they took the most popular requests, with A10, all the Adams stuff is completely customizable. But they took the most requested modifications to the A10 and made this horn. And now that's their artist series or their marching series. So, like Spirit of Atlanta, Georgia Tech, Cincinnati, Iowa State, Colorado. We're in negotiation with New Mexico. We got our fingers crossed on Alabama. So it's a lot of fun. But I do that for a little while, and then I'll head on.
So you were talking about recording socially distancing in that room. What I see on like your Instagram when you have, 20 stacked parts, are you doing those like you'll play first trumpet, sax will play first tenor and a trombone, and then you'll rotate and you'll do second, he'll do second and he'll do second. So you just sort of do them in chunks as if you're like one sliver of a big band. Is that how that works?
Yes, exactly. And we just in December, actually this past year in 2020, we did a lot of big band stacking. And it's interesting that you asked that because you can't really see it here, but there's two trumpets right here. There's two more here. There's a flugelhorn, and then I'm flanked by two trumpets. I have 6 trumpets and a flugelhorn here. Usually have 2 flugelhorns, my Adams A5. I just got this. Just got this in the mail on Sunday. As a matter of fact,
I saw that. That's beautiful.
N1 A1. So they're up to generation 3, which Trent has had a lot to do with designing and so on and so forth. But it's a good little horn. I'll use that. I use a different trumpet on each pass. Mm-hmm. Different trumpet, different mouthpiece. So obviously for the lead stuff, you use the most commercial thing that you have that makes it the easiest, the right tool for the right job. But then when I get down on the fourth trumpet, so most of the time I'm playing on a bigger mouthpiece. So yes, if we are all in the same room, and especially since we're doing head charts, so basically what we do is we listen to the intro, and then we start coming up with ideas, and we bounce, like I got an idea, and you play your ideas. So they play the track, you play your idea. Trombone player or the saxophone player, like I said before, will say, man, that's great. Let's put this in there to kind of hip it up a little bit or change it up a little bit. And usually the first pass is always unison, always the melody. And then if we're going to harmonize, we do it on the second, third, and fourth passes. When I'm working with Tyler, my partner, who I really enjoy, young Canadian cat, Tyler Summers Music, man. Check him out on Instagram. He's doing covers and originals that are really incredible. He did a clarinet version of Blackbird by the Beatles that will absolutely change your mind about everything that you know to be true in life. It's really, really outstanding. So when he and I are together, we do the first trumpet part and the first tenor, second trumpet, second tenor. Then I will put on 1 or 2 flugelhorn passes. And then I'll put the lead part on, like if we want anything, tricky high. But basically what we're doing is so that we don't have to go back. Like if you record the entire if you're making up parts, you're not writing anything down, and you record a 3-minute song and you make up all the first trumpet parts. Then if you go back to the beginning to record the second trumpet part, first of all, you're never going to remember what you played. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to have to read figure out the harmonies. So it's very time consuming. So if we have an 8-bar intro, we'll slam down 4 bars at a time. We'll make up the whole intro. Mm-hmm. Then we'll record 4 bars, completely stack it up, and then move to the next 4 bars and completely stack it up. So we never have to go back. We never have to go back to to the original tracks again. Once we're done with the intro, unless we use it again in the song and fly it somewhere in the song, we're done with that piece of music. And you can sort of, a really good session player, in my opinion, chews on the music, but doesn't swallow or start to digest it. You kind of chew on it and then you spit it out, right?
Yeah.
Because if you like we've made up some licks that I've whistled for an entire day or two that were real earworms. But generally, what we try to do is, because we're doing such a volume of material, we try and get in and get out pretty quickly. Do it, take ownership of it while you're doing it. In other words, a lot of these artists have been working on these songs for a long time. You know, some of these artists have been working on these songs for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And they finally got it to where they want it. So it's really like it's certainly a product of them, almost like a child. So you need to treat it like a child as a recording musician. Take ownership of it while you have it. Do your best. Put the icing on the cake, the cherry on top, and then hand it back, and you got to give it away. Because a lot of times we'll record some what we feel are really strong horn parts, and then they get edited, or they get somewhere lost in the mix. Like sometimes you'll listen to the track when you get it back as a record and you go, I swear we were oh wait, oh there it is. You know, you can call that a Nashville mix, but you could call it a mix. It's not a horn record, it's a vocal record. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's the other thing. One of the things I've learned from Tyler too, man, and I'm sorry for the stream of consciousness, but he's a vocalist, you know, he's a songwriter. So he knows the importance of the vocals. Mm-hmm. I've always paid attention to that, but I'm keenly aware of it in the last 10 years, because there are some times where you can come in on the end of a phrase or lap over the beginning of a phrase based on where it is in the range, where it is in the song, and what the actual words are saying. So really, really super important to kind of know your place. You know, we're there to, it's almost like a question and an answer. You know, the vocalist is asking the question and we're answering the question for him, but we're not talking at the same time. You know what I mean? So that kind of stuff is real important. I could go on about this stuff for.
No, I love it. You mentioned something about you have a couple mics and a couple horns. I was talking to Justin Powell. Do you know that name, Justin Powell? He's a good friend of mine down here in Atlanta. Sort of was really helpful in getting me started and getting me gigs and meeting people down here. Nicest guy in the world. And he was talking about, you were saying something about mic placement and a room mic and how that interacts with like a lead part. He put something on social media and it sounded completely different and a lot better when he was doing what you were saying. What were you sort of talking about with that?
When he and I first started talking, he was close micing with a decent condenser microphone, if I remember this correctly, and then he had a less expensive or less not as high quality a microphone that he had been using originally. Replaced it with the second one, and I told him in his room, he's got a long, narrow room, that I wanted him to put it. In his particular case, he'd put it in front of him in the right-hand corner of the room. And basically what this does is it's a second track that you record. So you record 2 tracks at a time. You record the close mic and the room mic. I happen to have Rode NT5 stereo matched. So that's 2 extras. And a lot of times, like this record I just did a couple days ago, I close mic with the Royer. I leave the Barkley back about maybe 5 feet and then use the rooms. So you're really getting a lot of presence. The mix engineer asked me if I had a little bit of reverb, if I had printed a little bit of reverb, but I hadn't. It was just the room. So you want to take and experiment around with it too. Basically, my friend John Gifford, who was the house engineer at Fame Recording down in Muscle Shoals for 10 years, told me that you want, like if you're recording a 3-piece section, you want the room mic to be closest to the softest instrument. So you don't want it anywhere near the trumpet or the trombone really in the right hands. You want it near the saxophone. So just kind of keep those things in mind. It instead of just catching what's in that 5-foot circle of recording, it catches everything in the room. And then what you can do is you can play around post with just putting reverb on the room mic, or putting reverb on the close mic, and really kind of, start to experiment. Because basically what we do is you send me an MP3, we record, and then I send you a mix back that has the horns a little bit up in the mix so that you can listen to the mix critically and say, oh man, I love everything. Or, hey, I'd like that second bar of the chorus to be a little different. Can you play a C sharp there instead of the one,
And that's probably how you would like the record to stay, I'm sure, when you send it to them with the horns a little hot in the mix.
In a perfect, well, actually, then it would be a horn record. No, as a matter of fact, it kind of backfires sometimes because an artist I was working with, I sent him, like a fireworks version of the horn parts. Like the lead trumpet was just like, just, and he said, gosh, it's kind of bright, and it's I don't really hear a whole lot of bottom and this and that. And I said, well, give me 10 minutes to work on the mix and I'll send it back to you. And I really thought he was gonna ask me to, re-record the whole thing. I mean, he was obviously upset. I turned I kind of balanced the section a little more. It was still, the section was still a little bit louder so he could hear it. And 2 minutes, 3 minutes after he got it back, he said, that's it. That's what you do. So you really got to be careful. What we want to hear as trumpet players is generally not what everybody else wants to hear, in the music. So just get a good balance. Find a section that you really like. Ask the artist. This guy kept bringing up the Commodores. And I'm like, dude, this song has nothing to do with the Commodores. He said, you're right. I want the Commodore's horn sound. And I was like, okay, let's talk about it a little further. We got a couple of groups. He wanted sort of an old soul, kind of an old R&B sound, as opposed to like, he didn't want Jerry Hay. He wanted Memphis or Muscle Shoals. That's what he wanted. So the trumpets are not quite as bright. So really listen to the artist and what they're telling you, because you might think that high Q flat on the trumpet is the best thing on the whole track, and they may not agree with you. And then when you're done with them, take all the reverb out, print them, send them dry and flat with no distortion, because most people nowadays are super edit happy. So they're going to take what you've done, even if it's a perfectly written and performed horn section, they're going to cut it up and dice it up and do some different stuff with it. Just sometimes it's just to kind of justify their job, and sometimes it's because they have a different vision for the song than you do. So just gotta, and that's the part where you take ownership while you have it, and then you let it go once it's gone.
Yeah, I was talking to Ryan Chapman this past summer during quarantine, and he was asking for people to record on some stuff. Did you record on one of his things?
I played second trumpet on one of those big band things that
he put out a thing, said, hey, trumpet players, yada yada, if I'm recording something, if you want to be a part of it. He actually said to all musicians, and so I was messaging back with him. Obviously, I mean, I was right out of college, and there was a world full of musicians that were gonna try to want to work with him. But he's asking me about my setup and everything, and I, at that point, just not even a year ago, I didn't have an interface or a mic. I had like a very rudimentary setup, and he was saying, today's day and age, if you're a musician who wants to do any playing, you have to be able to record yourself. And I know that's becoming apparent. Like I'm going back and doing some stuff at Auburn University with their trumpet studio, and National Trumpet Competition this year. There's a whole virtual component to it, virtual ensemble and virtual this and that. And it's been a humbling experience to try to learn all of this stuff during quarantine by myself, with YouTube and just asking people and figuring stuff out. But it really is a fulfilling experience when you make some headway.
I agree, and I think that YouTube is a great tool. I'm a Logic guy, and you find your guy, who you like. I like I can't remember his name, but he's a British cat and he's got long dreads, and his voice is soothing. He goes at a pace that I can understand. And, you know, with the Mac stuff, are you Mac?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Mac stuff, you know, it's like if you get in trouble, um, you just kind of go, okay, if I was writing this program, which is a big stretch, but if I was writing this program, what would I do next? And 9 times out of 10, whatever you do, it's so intuitive. It works like our brains do, as opposed to the PC thing, which I have to use for my little 10-hour a week part-time hustle with Pearl. That's completely not intuitive at all. Control plus this and that. Just like that doesn't compute. But find a good resource, and then if you get in trouble, then you call your buddies, because you don't want to be that guy that, unless you plan on really mastering the product and then putting yourself out for open phone calls to instruct anybody who's coming along, because you know, the other thing about that is some of us are oral learners, some of us are textual learners, and so the way somebody may teach you, that's what I mean by finding your guy or your girl on YouTube. Just find the person that appeals to the way that you learn. And then I have a tendency to put stuff in notes, you know, on my phone. I have a whole Sibelius email folder from when I was first learning Sibelius. And if I ever get into a jam, I just go back and again, 9 times out of 10, it's somewhere in that email list, and I've already learned it. I just forgot it, you know. So, but yeah, it's really cool. You know, the bottom line on tracks and stems, when you print the stems, is that you want it to match up at the beginning. You want to communicate to your producer. Track I got last week had a 5-beat count off on it, which is really fine. But, you know, I was going, bow. That's what I did on the intro. And so a couple of times I pulled the trigger starting on 3 or starting on 4 and hit it on 1, and I was a beat early. So communicate to your producer and say, you know, this is what I need from you, and then give them back flat front, you know, no EQ, nothing, just you know, a really good, clean recording with some great ideas, and allow them to. Sometimes they will ask for you to print the reverb because they like it so much. I love the treatment that you have with the horn. You know, can you send me your mix? Can you print the reverb that you're using? And then they just make that the record. But that's very rare. That's kind of old school. So yeah.
That's all awesome information. You're saying print the reverb, and yesterday I got on a call with a buddy who's studying music production at Middle Tennessee, actually. And I had done like a little recording thing that I wanted to sort of polish up, and I was like, hey, could you master this for me or do something with it? I don't know what to do. I'm sort of just trial and error, everything. And he was like, well, let's just walk through a couple of things. He actually sat on the phone with me for 45 minutes and walked me through adding a multi-band compressor, normalizing the gain, and then set up a reverb bus. Is that what you're talking about? And like printing onto another track? That's it's funny that you're saying that today. I just learned that phrase yesterday. So you're taking your tracks and you're running it through everything into I guess printing it onto a new finished product.
All of the first and second microphone tracks go to bus 1, and that's my close mic stuff. The room mics go to bus 2. I use the same reverb on both buses, but I turn it up different ways.
Okay.
Now, what most producers want is when you go through, are you using Logic?
I am.
Okay. When you go through and if you're creating an MP3, so you're not bouncing, you're exporting, or are you bouncing? Yeah, you're exporting an MP3. So when you go in there, you want the reverb on the tracks because you want to make it sound as sweet and as fat as you can when the artist is listening to it. But for me, 99.9% of the time, the producer or the artist or the engineer, They want dry tracks. So basically what I do is I go into my mix panel on Logic and I mute bus 1 and bus 2, or however many buses that I have. And that way I can keep the reverb exactly where I like it to listen to it when it's all mixed together, or when I'm soloing the horns. Because it really does, I cut dry, just dry as a paper bag. And because I believe that reveals a lot more. When you listen to dry tracks, if you can get a dry track to sound like, whoa, man, that's awesome, you're really doing something. Because then when you add whatever reverb you do and whatever EQ you do, that's just going to make it sweeter and sound even better. But getting the best clean product. So all of my producers want it flat and dry, and that's it. And so I don't send them, unless they request it, I don't send them stems with any reverb on it at all. It's just dry stem.
And something that I think a lot of people will be interested in, especially my age and maybe a little bit older than me, how was it for you? Like, what was the process for you to get started in that industry? And how do you think it's different in today's sort of climate?
When I moved to Nashville, the first thing I did is figure out who was doing the work that I wanted to do. All of the trumpet players, all of the saxophone players, all of the trombone players. I just made it. I just listened, kind of fly on the wall, and just listened to who was on the session, and the same names kept coming up over and over and over again. Thing about moving to a new town is this: you're when you show up, like back in the 90s, well, 25 years ago now, when I showed up, I had sort of the attitude like, okay, we can start the party now. You know, I'll take over from here. And you know, in the South, in any town, walking in with that kind of attitude, just don't do it. In the South, in particular, when you're coming from the North and everything is hurry, you know, do it now. You got to chill out. And so it took me a little while to learn and sort of rebound from that, and kind of stop pissing people off. And it eventually kind of caught up when I decided to change the way that I did business and become a more positive person, and you know, go on my fitness journey and all that kind of stuff. So, but basically what I did was I thought it was a great idea to go into Nashville with a gig. So I auditioned for Opryland. I was down in San Antonio, Texas at an amusement park for 10 months. And I let them know that I wanted to do the General Jackson, the riverboat that I was talking about earlier. And I got the gig, and it was 6 nights a week. And I think it paid $100 a night at the time. So it was $6 a week. And of course I was so broke, I couldn't pay attention at that point. So that was more money than I knew what to do with, really. So nowadays the difference is those gigs don't exist here in Nashville anymore. The park's gone, and the boat is a country show, so it doesn't use horns. So if you were going to move to a town, or if you were going to start out, I would have a secondary form of income. Now that could be teaching lessons, which you told me that you did all day today.
Teach elementary schoolers, like elementary school.
Oh, elementary school. Wow,
yeah.
That's even more hard. God, you even speaking right now, your brain. I'd be in a coma. I would need like an eye. So yeah, you know, teaching trumpet lessons or teaching lessons on your particular instrument, a straight job, you know, like what we're talking about with you, something that pays the bills so you don't have a whole lot of pressure. Because what you don't want to do is, a lot of guys and girls have moved to Nashville. First of all, it's littered with people who came here to make it and are now playing in 60-piece church orchestras for free every Sunday, because it's their only opportunity to play, and they're electrical engineers or they're whatever they are. So there's that side of it. Now, it's a combination of a bunch of different things. You know, planning these things is super important. So when you come to Nashville, go to work at a restaurant, or sell cars, or be an electrician, or whatever the deal is, leave enough time in your day that you can practice the trumpet, and then make the most out of your opportunities. So I got on a bunch of live gigs, and I would sub out every once in a while, even though we couldn't afford it. I played on a big band. So I was in Nashville for about 6 months, and everybody kept saying, you got to have a 5-year plan. You got to have a 5-year plan. You probably won't get your first session until this and that and the other thing, and then you won't do this and you won't do that and all that kind of stuff. And I really wanted to go on the road, because I had never been on the road in earnest. So I heard about this rehearsal band that was playing, and it was a Monday night, and I talked to my wife at the time, and I said, look, I know we can't afford it, but I think it's a good opportunity. So I went over there, and there was a lot of things going on behind the scenes that I wasn't aware of, that were good. But I played, the band leader said, I don't want you to play lead on the first set. I want you to play on the second set. I said, oh, okay, whatever you want to do. And it was just this roaring, fun big band. And a little redheaded girl came walking in right before the second set, and there was kind of a murmur in the crowd, and it was a girl named Shelby Lynn. Shelby had done a record, a big band record, Texas Swing, and she was doing a Christmas tour where she was going out for 6 weeks, and she was opening up for Kenny Rogers.
Wow.
6 days a week, 2 shows a day. Big theaters, the Fox Theater, sold out, the whole 9 yards. And the band leader, unbeknownst to me, had called her and said, look, I got this young guy. I think he's right for the gig. Come out at 10 o'clock and see him. Thank God he didn't tell me, because I would have been a nervous wreck. And so I played, and I get down off the stage, and I walk through the crowd, and she goes, hey. I say, hey. She said, I'm Shelby Lynn. I said, no shit. That's right, no kidding. And she said, I'm doing this little tour, and I'd like you to be my lead trumpet player. And that's how that worked. So that was incredible. And on that gig, I met a guy named Charles Rose. Charles is Muscle Shoals Horn's trombone player since 1972. One of the very first gigs he ever did with them was Elton John's second United States tour.
Wow.
They traveled around on a 747 and had chefs and beer roadies and all that kind of stuff.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was ridiculous, but it sounded like a really fun gig, like from what he can remember. He and I hit it off really well on the road, and after we were done in January of that year, I get a call, and he says, hey, Vin, we're doing this session down here in Muscle Shoals. I'd like you to come down and play trumpet. So fantastic, great. So I drive down, and when I was in college, right after college, I played in this cover band, and we used to do a song called "Who's Making Love to Your Old Lady" by a guy named Johnny Taylor, old R&B tune. One of my favorite tunes, because I love the horn parts. The message of the song was hysterically funny to me, but it was one of my favorites, and it was one of the first songs that we added to the list that the band would do when we started the band. So now fast forward, this is 1994, and I sit down. I'm there early, and I'm sitting in the chair, and I'm nervous as just a cat on a hot tin roof, man. I was just scared to death, and I leaned over to Charles, and I said, hey, man, who are we working for? And he said, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you, it's a Johnny Taylor record. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, I could have just retired then.
That's crazy.
One of my first sessions ever. And then, kind of as a result of that, and then some other things in Nashville, I started to get called to do sessions. And I quickly, very, very quickly realized that it was such a passion for me. So those kind of opportunities, especially during COVID, obviously don't exist. And with Shelby, we had like 7 or 8 piece horn section. Now, I think you'd be lucky to get 2, maybe 3. Brian Setzer's still going to go out with his big band and pay what he pays and all that kind of stuff. So there are some opportunities, but I think I think you have to be in the town where the music you want to play or create is being played.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you really do. If you want to be a jazz player, man, you got to go to New York, you know. And if you want to be a pop guy, you can come here or you can go to LA. There's not a huge recording scene, but there is, in my opinion, there's plenty of work for really great players. There's always plenty of work for really great players. Wayne Bergeron was not going to go to LA and not work. You know what I'm saying? Even though
Absolutely.
time when he got there, there were so many great trumpet players, but he bided his time. And when he went in, he played great. He's a good hang. He's an affable guy, funny, easy. And now he's the man, you know what I mean? So I think that nothing ever stays the same. You're not going to move to a town and immediately start to be the dude. Like if you came here, I'd be like, Jeff, this is what I'll do. I'll put you on my list. And if I don't do something, I'll give you the opportunity to do it. And then you go in, you get your opportunity, you do it. You either keep the account or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
But there's not a lot of low hanging fruit with regard to sessions because, you're going to go in there and you're going to make anywhere from $75 to $250 an hour to play your trumpet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, dear Lord, you know what I mean? Who doesn't want to do that? Trumpet player or trombone or saxophone. And really, for me, recording is your legacy. My grandkids will be able to go to allmusic.com and just pick a record that I played on and find it on the internet and say, that's my poppy, that's my dude. And so it's really an amazing way to be able to get through life. I love it.
And what I'm getting from, I've had conversations with a bunch of people about this sort of thing. How do you make it? It really is sort of like your trumpet playing is 50 or 60 or 70% of it, and who you are as a person, how you interact with people, how outgoing you are and willing to take the opportunities you are. Because if you say no once, that shuts off a whole stream. I was talking with Louis Dowdeswell about this, and he was saying it's stepping stones, and you can go off into different paths. One no can shut down a whole path of stepping stones that you'll never get that opportunity to invest in because you weren't willing to do that one opportunity.
Well, but the issue, and I agree with that 100%. I really do. And I, there was a long time where I never said no to anything. I mean, somebody would say, I got a $25 door gig, and I would bust my chops to try and get there. You have to put a realistic, and I'd say that with emphasis, a realistic value on your time. So you and I'm 58, you're in your 20s. I have 6,000 records. You have a couple of dozen, maybe 100, whatever you have. It's likely that that you and I could be on the same recording session making the same money. But when we start to negotiate and all that stuff, the person with more experience oftentimes will get the premium and the guy. But with that said, there are guys here in Nashville that are working for $50 a tune. Mm-hmm. And that's not the way to go, because basically what you're doing is, first of all, the producer's going to get what he pays for. So if he wants a quality recording, he's going to have to pay the premium to get the guys that have the experience that are going to bring it. It's good to give people a chance, but when it's just about the money, you're not just hurting yourself by doing 8 songs in a day for $400 when you could be getting $400 a song. Mm-hmm. You're hurting everybody, because now that producer moves on and says, well, I just hired a guy for $50, that's all I got. And it kind of perpetuates itself that way. So saying no, I saw a thread, you may have seen this the other day. It was a guy about an Easter gig, and he said, normally on Easter I would make $100, and this guy called and offered me $75. What do you think I ought to do? And there was a litany of, pretty positive. It was on PTW, so it was pretty positive stuff. But most everybody said, tell the guy, hi, baby. Tell the guy what your rate is, stick to it, and then politely, turn the gig down. Thing is that, you could be working 7 days a week. You could be working twice a day, 7 days a week. But if you're working for $25 a service, you're working a lot for a little bit of money. Again, that's why having the straight job, having your teacher salary, gives you the comfort zone to be able to say, that's to yourself, that's a lot of work. It's not a lot of money. This is the value I put on myself. I want to make $50 an hour when I sit in front of the computer and record horns, or I want to make $150 an hour, or I want to make $500 an hour, whatever your price is. But don't be the cheapest guy. Be the best guy and be there somewhere in the middle. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm one to, when it, especially in college, when it comes to playing the trumpet, I wanted every opportunity, because I came from Auburn University where there isn't a lot going on. So when there was like a bar gig or something where I got to play music that I love to play for people that wanted to listen to it, I would have played a 3-hour show for a bar tab, and no money. Like at that point in my life, as long as I was playing trumpet, that was like pay enough for me. And if we got, free drinks on top of it, that was fantastic. But, and I'm still will play if it's something that's like, just like 1 or 2 hours of something for under $100, I'll do it, especially for the time that we're in. And I am very much a yes man, but I had to say no to my first thing like 2 weeks ago. Somebody wanted like three rehearsals, 2 dress rehearsals, a concert, and writing parts for $25. and I didn't know that pay until a little bit later in, and I had roped a couple of people into it, and we all found that out, and we were just like, I'm sorry, that's very unreasonable. Where the night before I found that out, I had played a 2-hour show in Auburn, like traveled back there for $250 with no rehearsal, no music, just like show up and play your horn. And I was like, that's what you get paid for, for what you want.
Yeah, I agree with that. And there's a lesson there too, man, is that, and this is a difficult conversation to have, but a lot of people, a lot of people play music for fun.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a band with 5 or 6 guys that are lawyers or doctors, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
When you go into the office and you got a big wart on the end of your nose, you kind of know, you're going to have to pay a copay and your insurance is going to cover some of it, but you're going to have to, there's a way to find out how much the operation is going to cost. Sometimes the doctor will even say, well, when I do surgery, it's $6,000, blah, 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 blah. Walking into a gig or going into a situation where you don't know what you're making and you're just dependent on the goodness of others is a recipe for disaster.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, here's what happened. So this guy doesn't talk about, you don't talk about money because it's uncomfortable. I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want to talk about money because it's so freaking low, right? And then you get to a couple days before the gig. So now you're off the hook. That's fine. Your buddies are off the hook too. This guy still needs to find horn players. There's probably somebody out there that he could have gotten for $25 you 5 or 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You know what I mean? You're in college and you're kicking butt and all you want to do is play your horn and this guy comes along and you're going, shit, I would have played this for free. That's a case of beer or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's really important, in my opinion, it's really important to take care of business on the front end,
mm-hmm.
especially if it's a new client. If it's somebody you've worked with before, they know your rate. People, all my producers know how much we charge per tune. They don't need to ask. You know what I mean? If they need a break, go ahead and ask. And we'll do the best we can to accommodate them, especially if it's somebody we've done 20 or 30 songs for. But take care of that business part of it ahead of time, including how much you're going to make, what your exposure is. Like if the guy says it's going to be a 3-hour rehearsal, then say, okay, we're going to show up at 6 o'clock, but at 9 o'clock, we're going to have to leave because we all have responsibilities the next day. So we're rehearsing at 9. We'll make as little noise as we can, but we're going to politely excuse ourselves. It's not unreasonable. And what it does is it makes him accountable. It makes your leader accountable. So he's going, hey guys, I only got the horns till 9. Let's come on. We can't take a 30-minute break, blah, 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 blah. Find out when you're going to get paid, because I've been on sessions, man, where, we recorded something and it sounds really good. And we're listening to it, and then we listen to it again, and then we listen to it again. And the horn players are just kind of, we're sitting there staring at our feet, kind of kicking at the stones on the floor. And we're like, so, what about the money? And they're like, oh my gosh, I've had checks in my pocket since you guys walked in the door. I should have given them to you a long time ago. It's not a priority for a lot of people because, frankly, if I hear the song once or twice at the end of the session and the artist says, perfect, I'm out. Mm-hmm. I'm out. I've chewed on it. I spit it out. I'm out. So just handle your business. Figure out a way that's kind of your style. If you're a super aggressive person, be super aggressive. Be true to yourself. Be nice. Be kind. Be loving. Mm-hmm. But figure out what the best way is. I mean, if you don't mind hanging out and kicking stones on the floor and wait until they go, oh my gosh, I've had this check, then do that. But really knowing what you're making, when you're getting paid, all that stuff, because you may come in and say, we're going to do this for $125 a tune, and they're going to say, oh my God, all I have is $125 for all 3 songs. You just gotta get that crap out of the way, because there's always the potential, especially in the recording industry. And I've had this happen a couple times. We worked for a very, very famous artist. She has blonde hair, and she is currently re-recording her entire catalog. And it was her birthday. And the producer, who's a good friend of ours, said, hey man, we're going to add horns to this song just for her birthday. We're going to play it for her birthday, and that's going to be it. And I said, man, why don't we get this going through the union just in case? He's like, no. I promise, man. We're just going to use it for the birthday. And then it's going to be over with, because, we don't do the song that much. So we did, and we made a good, it took us 45 minutes. We made $250. It's a good little hit, right? Mm-hmm. Turns out that she used it on her tour, which may or may not have been called the Red Tour, for 2 years. She used the tracks for 2 years. So at the end of the 2 years, we kind of got wise, and we went back to our union guy and we said, hey man, what can we do about this? Or shouldn't they owe us some money? So technically, according to the union contract, you're supposed to get paid $168 every single time the song is played. And they did 150 dates over the 2 years. I can see you doing math in your head.
Yeah, that's a little bit of money.
You were like, oh, that's choke on it money. That's pay off your car money.
Yeah.
And so we were like, yeah, what can we do? And they're like, well, just let's look up the contract. And I was like, well, I asked to put it on the card, but he said, all they were going to do is, use it for the birthday. And the president of the union, rightfully so, said, man, they are not going to reward bad behavior like that. So just don't ever do that again. And they wound up settling with the string players not for the total amount, but it was a nice little fall right out of the sky kind of thing. So taking care of that business up front, man, nobody is gonna, because it could turn into something like that, or it could turn into a TV theme song. What if the guys that did the theme song for Friends
had just done it on a one-off?
Had just done it for $500 a piece. That thing ran for 10 years, and it's still running somewhere in the world right now. And every time it runs, they get a little money. So, it's just you know, it's take care of your business on the
Mm-hmm.
front end. And then once that's done, when you walk into the session or when you're on the phone the next time, there's not that onus of money, and you can be creative and you can really let go and show your personality and really be into the project without somewhere in your brain going, gosh, I hope this guy is paying decent on this project. You relax and it creates a great situation. It really does.
And all this stuff is really like you're your own business. You're your own business. Half of what what you do and what I aspire to do, and all these people are trying to do coming out of college and trying to find their way is you need to know about the business side of it. You need to know about the music side of it. You need to know about the people side of it, the equipment side of it. It really is an all-encompassing career that you've built, which is incredible.
I agree 100%. I agree 100%.
I have one more thing that I'd like to just run by you. I told you I was talking to Louis Dowdswell. I'll send you a video of him. He has some pretty viral, very cool videos on YouTube. He, in our talks, I also had a lesson with him on Friday, and he was talking about the ratio of tradesmen to being a tradesman and being an artist. Where do you see yourself in that sort of ratio? Like having a set of skills and giving somebody what they want, or more of the artistic side of it? What do you see with that?
I definitely think that's a chicken and an egg question, because I think you kind of come at it from the very beginning of when you play trumpet. It's kind of already decided, and I don't know whether it's your personality or the music that you listen to, or it's definitely what turns you on. I really don't have a strong desire to be standing out in front of a big band, blowing a couple of solos, conducting the band, or like a Chris Bodie thing where he travels with his rhythm section and does the orchestra thing and all that kind of. It's just not something that I desire to do. So I would say that I am more of a tradesman. What really turns me on and really turns my crank and really gives me a tremendous amount of fulfillment is taking a product that is great, because most of the tracks that we get are just, they would be like, if you put them out like that, they would crush it. I want to take it from that level where it's already really good and make it better because of our contribution. That really, really gives me a tremendous amount of gratification, being able to do that for an artist, being able to forge a relationship with that person. And then I just got off the phone earlier today with a lady over in North Carolina. When we first started working for her, probably 3 years ago, the guy she was working with at the time, the producer she was working with at the time, sent us a song, and he said, I'd like to talk you through what we want. And I said, great. And that's part of it, man. The phone time and the email time and the messages and the this and that and the other thing. A lot of the video stuff now. He did 20 minutes on a 3-minute song. I really want this here. We want the trombone to sound like Jimmy Pankow on this particular song. We want the trumpet solo to sound like, does anybody know what time it is? And then through the song, really Chicago-based horns. And then I want the trumpet on the first half of the solo section, saxophone on the second half. I want 4 different options with each solo. 4 different options with each solo. And it really took a long, long time to get through it. Now, 50 songs later, hey, cut it out. Hey. She's weighing 125 pounds. I'm not telling her what to do. Now, when they send a song now, they just say, do your thing. So it's 40 or 50 songs later. And each time the explanation got shorter and shorter and shorter. And man, if he still called me and did 20 minutes on each one of the tunes, I'm going to embrace the process, because he wants to say what he wants to say, but I like that, building that trust musically And
And I would say what you're doing really is, it's really a mix of tradesman and, you know, being an artist, because I was thinking more of tradesman, like somebody hands you a part for a recording and says, this is what I want it to sound like, make it sound like this. And you're just
right.
sort of using the skills that you have and realizing something that they have in their head. But what you're doing is taking kind of like a sketch of a canvas and adding color to it, and you're creating everything you're creating. That's why I would call what
YouTube moment. Look at that. That's going to be videos. That's cool. You know, I agree with that, man. I do. You know, you are. I've actually gotten writers credit on some things
really.
because it wound up being so hooky, and
It brings so much. It brings 50% to a song sometimes.
people would sing the horn parts and forget the words.
Mm-hmm.
I played in a band for a number of years where that was the entire purpose of the band, is to create these earworms that people could not get out of their head. And it really worked. And the rhythm section guys and the guys that were writing a lot of the material were giving us songs that really lent themselves. First of all, it was a horn band, and that was the first and foremost thing that it was. And I wrote on 3 or 4 records with them, including writing an entire song, co-writing an entire song, which winds up being the most popular song in their catalog, the one they've sold the most, which is really incredible. So yeah, I agree, man. I guess in that respect, I always said I could write horns on top of horns, playing "Come to Jesus" in whole notes. You know what I mean? There's not many tunes that I get that I don't go, well, yeah, we can definitely brighten this up with some horns on it. But yeah, that's interesting. You know, and that comes from studying and listening. You know, my first trumpet teacher told me, he said, start listening to trumpet players. When you hear trumpet players, start listening to trumpet players, because basically what's going to happen is you're going to pull 1 or 2 things from each one of the players, you know, Doc and Maynard and Arturo and Clifford Brown and Freddie Hubbard, and, you know, and all these different guys. And then that's eventually going to become you.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, a lot of us held Maynard in such high esteem. If somebody comes up to you and says, golly, man, Maynard Ferguson doesn't have anything on you. First of all, you know, they're full of crap. But secondly, that's a huge compliment, especially if it's somebody, man, it really reminds me of, you know, this guy when he played on this record and this and that and the other thing. It's the same thing with horn parts. Like, if you don't know all of Jerry Hay, Gary Grant, and Chuck Finley's recordings, you know, you just, in the pop world, my go-to is a record by Al Jarreau called High Crime.
Mm-hmm.
And the song is Imagination, with that just ridiculous opening lick. That's the sound of every horn section that I ever want to play in. You know what I mean? It's just and great, incredible writing, and absolutely amazing playing. I think Wayne Bergeron was on that. And the story is that he sight read that horn break, including the double C on the end of it. So there's a guy that's easy to hate, right?
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I think that we're contributing on a huge level to the success of a song, especially like the guy that sent me the thing today. He said the quote is, "The intro is all you." So basically, you're listening to the song, you're listening to the melody of the song, you listen to the chorus and the bridge and the channel, and you're coming up with something that sort of harkens. It sort of sets up all of that stuff in the first 8 bars. And, you know, a lot of times I remember being in people's offices when I had a friend who was the head of publishing for Warner Chappell for a long time. And we would go to lunch and I would sit with him for the afternoon. And back then somebody would bring a cassette in and he would throw the cassette in and he would listen to the first 20 seconds. And if it didn't grab a hold of him, it went
Done.
Yeah. So it's just like, you can really make or break a song with your contribution to the song. So yeah, I guess in that respect, I would consider myself an artist. But so much, I've been around so many, and most of the ones that I've been around have been really awesome. But there's a there's a special person it takes a special person to be an artist. First of all,
Mhm.
imagine you with whatever personality quirks that you have, right? Then all of a sudden you're surrounded by 50 people on tour that are looking at every single thing that you do and analyzing everything you do. And what did he mean by that? Or do you think he's, and this and that? I can't even imagine the kind of pressure it would be to be.
Yeah, it's sort of like what we unconsciously do, even like looking at interviews with people like, like Chris Bodie or whatever they do. We sort of, you look at everything through a completely different eye, as well as the 10, 20, 30,000 people that are watching him live every night. I can't even imagine that kind of pressure with the mic that he has and the sound system that he has. How does he even play the trumpet?
The uh the the Star Spangled Banner he did years ago at one of the big football games was,
Hmm.
he did it in E flat, and God, just gorgeous. I've been fortunate to do the Nashville Symphony with him a couple of times, and he's really a magnificent player. Say what you will about him, but he is just a monster player. And every once in a while, he would turn around as kind of a stop. We call it a stop lick. Like if you make a mistake in a session, you want to play something that's so obtuse to the song that the engineer goes, oh, that doesn't sound right. I'm going to stop. So you want him to stop, right? It's called stop lick. Chris would turn around and play a stop lick that would be like, it would make your eyes cross. It was so freaking cool. I'm like, that needs to be in the song, dude. Of course,
Hmm.
coming from a trumpet player to another trumpet player, and and all that stuff. There's so many great players and so many guys that do things so well. It's really really remarkable, really
Hmm.
remarkable.
And
And the
I love what you do.
oh,
That's what I want to do. Sitting in a room, making something perfect, and having free reign over it. And I love your sound. Like I will say, there are lots of different avenues you can go down with your sound. And if you want to be a jazz player, classical player, your sound is really what I try to go for. I absolutely love it. And that's why I love talking to you about your mic setup and your horns and your
well,
process, because I'm captivated by
there's nothing subtle. There's nothing subtle in
it.
my sound for sure. Although I'm working on that aspect of it. Man, I just picked up a mouthpiece, and I'm not on the Safari. I use a bunch of different stuff, mostly Steve's. Um, I use his 94S for like what Gary Grant calls it, his double scale mouthpiece. Like he tells the story, like this guy asked him to play a double C or something, and he reaches down in his case and he pulls it out and he says, if I have to use this, it's double scale. And he pops it in. The guy says, "No problem." Nobody's ever said no problem to me. I say it, and people are like, "Whatever, shut up and play." Uh, but and I play on an old Dave Stahl jet tone, and I have no qualms about it at all. I'm a firm believer in using the correct tools that make the job the easiest. Now, am I going to play the Haydn on that mouthpiece? No. Am I going to play the Haydn at all? Okay, so let's get that straight. But Atom Fest is here in Tennessee this year. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's up in Clarksville at Austin P.
Is that a public event?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you have to pay. I think it's a
Yeah.
couple, and if it stays live, we're so close. It would be impossible for me not to go. So I'm planning on attending. I hope it stays live because they do East Coast and then West Coast. They alternate years, so it would be another couple of years before it would come back over this way. And Mr. Adam, I've not studied with anybody that studied with him. I never studied with him, but the one thing that he said over and over and over and over and over again in print and on any video that I've seen is sound is the most important thing that you can produce. to me, sound is a 10 or an 11, and then feel is 10 and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else can be fixed. Articulation, you can work on your multiple tonguing, you can work on your commercial, creating compression. Pitch can be learned and fixed. Reading can be learned and fixed. You just got to do it. It's like riding a bike, and eventually you become better and better and better on the bicycle. And once you learn how to read, you always know how to do it, like riding a bike. But then there's the subtleties of it, whether it's learning groupings and then, and I'm sorry I'm being so disjointed. When you run into something in the studio, like if you're playing along and you're doing a part and you're playing a 4-part thing, and there's some impossible jump in the second trumpet part, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
remember that. Remember it. If it gave you a hard time, remember it, and then take it back into the practice room and practice that interval, that 9th or that 10th or that 11th, from the high A down to the F in the staff, whatever it is, and then do it chromatically and play that thing hundreds and hundreds and thousands of times, so that the next time you come upon it, you can rest into, I've done this 1,000 times, I'm not even going to sweat it. You know what I mean? Opposed to, you play it in a session, next time you see it is a year later and you haven't practiced it, and you're like, holy crap, I remember that from that session. I'm never going to be able to do that. That's the wrong way to go. That's the wrong way to go for sure. Anyway, I forget why I went off on that tangent. The sound, I'm not an incredible technical player. I don't play super high. I can play a double C when you need one. Most of the time, in my thousands of recordings, I've really never been asked to play above a high A.
Mm-hmm.
That's just kind of the money note.
The working range.
Anything that was above that, I sort of volunteered. And with regard to volunteering, if you're in a session and something is begging to go up an octave, don't play it with the rest of the section. Wait. With technology the way it is, this is what you can do. You finish the whole song, and the producer goes, okay, we're done. Let's take 5. Everybody leaves the room. You ask the producer if you can have a separate track, and I want to put a little sizzle on this. Go to bar 68 and give me 68 through 72, and I'm going to take that up an octave. And 9 times out of 10, I know I say that a lot because I'm old. 9 times out of 10, the producer's going to go, oh, yeah, well, let's give it a try. And the way you sell it is you say, well, if you hate it, just scrap it. But I'm going to like it. The thing that accomplishes is you're serving the music. You've had the whole rest of the song to think about it. Is it really? Yes, I'm going to go for it. And then you're not taking up everybody else's time. If it's something crazy technical and you miss it a couple times, it's just your time. You're giving up your break. The rest of the and everybody will appreciate that. That is the way to go.
That's really good advice, because I've been on a couple of things where that scenario has come up, and I think I handled it similarly to that, and that's definitely great, because I know the feeling of being in the studio and you feel like you're taking up other people's time when things go, and that is as a nerve-wracking feeling, especially for a young person. Starting out recording, I was driving a manual car the other day. My buddies, I haven't driven a manual car in 6 years, and I was at a red light on a hill, and I'm already nervous about getting going, right? So I go and I stall. Well, then you gotta turn the car on, and then you're more nervous about going, so you burn the clutch when you're going. So it's like it's that situation of, you're doing something uncomfortable. Then when you mess up and everyone's looking at you, then you're way more uncomfortable and have to still do it. So,
and if you're in a situation where you have a lick in a song that's giving you fits, and you do it 2 or 3 times, if you're surrounded by people who care about you and want you to succeed, first of all, they're going to be rooting for you instead of against you. That's the people that you want to be with. That's your crew. Somebody who loves you and wants you to succeed. If I run into a situation like that, oftentimes what I'll do is I'll say, can we just record the rest of the chorus and come back to this? And it releases your mind from that tension, from that hamster wheel that you're on. Play the rest of the chorus, finish it up, and say, okay, let's go back to that lick. 100% of the time I get it as soon as I go back to it.
Mm-hmm.
So just, just be with people. When you get a chance to pick the people that you're with, be with people that care about you in that way. And you and I have talked about this, man. And I saw this again, a question on recording for brass players or something, one of the Facebook groups, and it's a cool little group, and you should check
Is
it out.
the home recording one?
They changed the name of it. Now it's just
okay.
brass players. So one of the guys, all right, let me think about what he was asking. Hold on, what were we just talking about? Because I've just had a senior moment. Hold on. Oh shoot, man!
About getting nervous or recording stuff and taking up people's time, choosing who you're around.
Yeah, I totally forgot. I'm so sorry, man. I'll probably remember it right after we get off, and I'll have to call you on the phone and let you know what it was.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
It was really good.
Okay, I'll take your word. I think we talked about a bunch of incredible stuff, things that I definitely learned and got out of this, and things I hope other people are going to listen and take to heart and maybe help them on their journey getting out of college. And I know that's sort of where my life journey is at right now. So that's sort of where my mind's at, but I know there's people all different ages that are really going to enjoy listening to the stuff that you have to say.
I love talking about trumpet and bringing the, I mean, it kind of borders on a little braggadocious, and I don't want to seem that way, and I always tell people, it ain't bragging if it's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You can document the fact that I've done almost 6,000 records. You can go in and you can count them, and you can count the number of Grammys, and you can count the number of this and that and the other thing. If you are a young player and want the benefits, see, I didn't have anybody that, when I first came into Nashville, it was a town, there was a lot of really sweet people, but the people that I was surrounded by were, well, nobody told me, so I'm not going to tell you. And I vowed right at that moment that I was never going to let that happen. So if anybody out there watching this wants to hang out, I love talking about this stuff. I remember what it was, man. The question was, the guy was doing some remote recording where everybody was sending in the tracks, and he was spending a lot of time lining up the stems and lining up the grid.
Mm-hmm.
And my comment was pretty simple: leave some humanity in the track. So what you can't do is, and I think you and I went through this.
Yes.
I said this to you, and then you sent me another track, which was absolutely Nat's butt tight, but you had edited it and tuned it to the point where it didn't sound as natural as I like it. Like if you listen to some of your favorite songs, if you listen to September by Earth, Wind & Fire, there's a couple of mistakes in there. There's a couple of chipped notes. I mean, I don't know how you could play that thing single tongue and not be making mistakes on it. So there's a couple of mistakes, but they left them in, because it leaves that little bit of humanity. So when I'm doing tracks and I'm sitting on the third trumpet and it's right in the middle register there, if the lick is be boo dep bop, and the third trumpet, I go be dep bop, and it just kind of hiccups a little bit, I leave it in. Because, man, it makes it sound like you and me and two of our good friends are playing in a really kick-ass trumpet section. And so leave space and leave humanity in your parts. I have a really good young friend. I've known him since he was in 9th grade. Amazing trumpet player, and has started doing some recording. His recordings sound like a burning jazz solo from start to finish that's been harmonized in 4 parts. And there's no room for vocals. There's no room for a good chicken picking guitar. There's no room for a bass lick. It is solid horns from start to finish. And that just is one of those things where it's just a lack of experience, and a little bit of a lack of maturity. I got a lot to say, and I'm going to say it all in this one song. Just take your time, man. And leave the humanity in the track. So that would be my advice to you and anybody else listening, really, is that when you're recording, don't overthink it. You know, you want it to be tight, but you have the technology and the time. Nobody's going to call you tonight and say, I got to have horns by 10 o'clock tonight.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's never an emergency like that. It may be a couple of days, but you've always got a little bit of time. And because of technology, you can do it as many times as you need to get it to feel
Like natural.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
feel the best. You want it to feel real, real natural, and everything swings, whether it's pop or jazz or classical, or it's right there in that pocket. You know it, you know, because you got the ear and you got the feel. You just need to let it flow a little bit more. And the more experience you have, you know, and then you need somebody like Charles Rose. Charles would look at me and his charts were immaculate. They were all, back in that day, they were all handwritten
Mm-hmm.
and big. So if you made a mistake, it was you. It wasn't the chart.
Mm-hmm.
And he would say, Vinny, that quarter note in bar 13 on 4 is short. You want to play it short for me? Taught me 90% of what I know about playing in a section, man. And there is so much to be said for everybody being on the same page, everybody understanding. Listen to what I'm playing. And everybody, once they figure out the notes, you go 3, 4. There is something to be said for that. Super tight. Everybody on the same page. The saxophone players are playing the note the same length as you are. If a trumpet player goes, then the saxophone player has to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Finding those guys that can do that.
And my thing is, you talk about that, and that's what I hear, and that's what I know. So when I go to record myself doing 4 parts,
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get it to sound like if I had the 4 tightest trumpet players, all doing it together. And then I go listen to stuff on your Instagram, and you throw on these doits and these shakes, and it just sounds like it really sounds like if I'm in a section, we get to the end of the chart and the lead trumpet player next to me just goes for it, and you turn and you're like, yeah, like it's that like human feeling to it. That's you sort of say 2 things, which I totally get both: be tight and be human. And it's hard to find that balance.
Find those tracks, man. Geo Washington on Facebook will put something. Find him on Facebook, Geo Washington, and he did a web service a while back. I think it started as a graduate studies course, and basically it breaks down famous horn books. He's got it for it's called The Usual Suspects. When you Google it, you'll get the movie a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
Find it as you go down. And a lot of it's, I listen to the Jerry Hay stuff, and it's the breakdown on, I think it's Shake Your Body Down by Michael Jackson. And if you listen to that track, it's impossible to play live,
Mm-hmm.
everything that's going on live. But what they did was they did 4 passes. And one of them was, that was it. That's
Mm-hmm.
all they played. The baritone saxophone is the ugliest, crappiest thing you ever heard in your life. And then they put it together with all the rest of the tracks. And it's that, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just absolutely amazing, man. If you can find that and you can hear what I'm talking about,
Mm-hmm.
you hear that on the record, it is so tight. You're just like, holy crap, how'd they do that? But when you hear the natural recording without the reverb, man, those tracks are incredible. But by themselves, it's like, what in the world? And then they put it together and it's like, oh my gosh, there it is. So it is just a little bit of that slipperiness in there but you're headed down the right road, man. You're aware and you're listening to the right things. And it's just a matter of getting in there, getting your crew and creating. Listen, man, if you can put together a drum loop and a bass part, you can have the guys over and record 3 horns.
Fun, yeah.
We've been sitting around that 57 right there. We're not talking about anything. And then you guys can listen back and say, okay, let's do this differently this time. What I encourage you to do is record 8 bars and then save that 8 bars and then discuss it and record that 8 bars again. And then listen the first time and the corrections that you made should be very glaringly apparent on the second time. It's basically like practicing for a recital.
Mm-hmm.
They know when you say short on 4 or a throwaway fall. Throwaway fall is bam, bam,
Mm-hmm.
bam. You know what I mean? It's as opposed to bam, right?
Yeah.
I could talk about falls for 20 minutes, man. All the garbage that you should have in falls. As much noise as you can make on a long fall, you should be banging on pots at the end of it. You know what I mean?
I
Just
love it.
absolutely. So, yeah, man. Well, it's been great hanging out with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm honored to have you on here, and I'm sure people are going to love listening to this and get lots of awesome information out of this. I know I did, for sure. And I have a couple more great ones that are coming up soon. Thank you, Mr. Vinnie Ciesielski. Thank you for all your expertise and your time. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, man.